сзади, группа КТП! Пидорасы, блядь!
Рука, стоп, кто это?
Russia advanced 8 kilometers in less than 48 hours, rolling forward with tanks, armored vehicles, and assault units that believed the hardest part of the fight was already behind them. From their perspective, Ukrainian defenses had collapsed, resistance had weakened, and the road ahead looked wide open. Recon drones showed scattered enemy movement. Radio intercepts suggested confusion. Everything pointed to a breakthrough. And for a brief moment, it felt like the front line had finally cracked. But what Russian commanders didn't realize was that every meter of that advance had already been measured, calculated, and prepared for. What looked like a retreat was actually an invitation. What seemed like weakness was carefully designed bait, and the deeper Russian forces pushed, the more perfectly they aligned themselves inside a massive invisible trap. The battlefield was quiet in an unsettling way. Villages stood half-empty, roads were abandoned, and fields stretched open under gray skies. Russian columns advanced cautiously at first, scanning for drones, watching tree lines, expecting ambushes. But none came. Ukrainian artillery was strangely silent. There were no missile strikes, no counterattacks, no aggressive drone swarms. It was as if the defenders had simply vanished. This silence created confidence. Russian units began to move faster. Tanks pushed ahead without waiting for infantry support. Supply trucks followed closer behind. Electronic warfare vehicles advanced to extend their jamming coverage. The formation stretched longer and thinner, exactly as Ukrainian planners hoped. Far behind the front, Ukrainian operators sat in underground command centers, watching everything unfold in real time. Satellite imagery, long-range drones, thermal feeds, and intercepted radio traffic painted a clear picture of Russian movements. Every vehicle, every column, every pause, every acceleration was logged. Algorithms tracked the speed and spacing of convoys. Artillery officers calculated firing solutions long before the first shell was loaded. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. Ukrainian forces had deliberately pulled back from a forward defensive line that had become predictable. Instead of fighting for every trench and tree line, they designed a layered kill zone stretching kilometers deep. Anti-tank teams were hidden in forests. Artillery batteries were pre-registered on roads and choke points. Drone operators hovered at high altitude, invisible to Russian radar, waiting for the signal. The Russian advance moved directly into this corridor. 8 kilometers in, the terrain narrowed. A raised highway cut through low marshland, forcing vehicles into a tight formation. To the north, dense woods blocked lateral movement. To the south, flooded fields made off-road travel nearly impossible. The road became a funnel, and the funnel became a cage. Russian units hesitated briefly. Something felt wrong. The lack of resistance no longer seemed reassuring. But momentum had taken over. Orders were to push forward, exploit the breakthrough, and seize key logistics hubs ahead. Stopping now would mean losing the initiative. So they kept moving. Then, without warning, the first strike landed. A single artillery shell slammed into the lead armored vehicle, tearing it apart in a flash of fire and metal. Seconds later, the road behind the column exploded as another round hit a fuel truck, sending a towering plume of black smoke into the sky. In less than 15 seconds, the entire convoy was trapped, and then the sky opened. Dozens of artillery batteries fired simultaneously from concealed positions miles away. Precision-guided shells rained down on pre-mapped coordinates, striking vehicles with surgical accuracy. Tanks were hit from above, where their armor was thinnest. Personnel carriers were shredded. Fuel and ammunition trucks detonated, turning the road into a corridor of fire. Russian troops scrambled for cover, diving into ditches, hiding behind wreckage, trying to escape into nearby fields, only to find them saturated with mines and pre-targeted fire zones. Drone swarms appeared overhead, dropping explosives directly into open hatches and troop clusters. Every movement triggered another strike. Communications collapsed almost instantly. Ukrainian electronic warfare units jammed radio frequencies, severing command links between frontline units and rear headquarters. Officers shouted orders that no one could hear. Satellite phones failed. GPS signals vanished. Chaos replaced coordination. Inside burning vehicles, crews struggled to escape. Some made it out, only to be cut down by sniper fire from concealed Ukrainian positions. Others were pinned by relentless shelling, unable to move, unable to fight back. Within minutes, the entire 8-kilometer advance corridor became a death trap. Russian artillery attempted to respond, but Ukrainian counter-battery radar had already identified their firing positions. Precision strikes destroyed several Russian gun batteries before they could complete a second volley. Air support was called in, but Ukrainian air defenses forced Russian aircraft to launch missiles from long distances, reducing accuracy and impact. Every Russian attempt to stabilize the situation ran into another layer of the trap. Reinforcements sent forward encountered blocked roads, burning wreckage and targeted strikes. Supply convoys never reached the battlefield. Evacuation vehicles were destroyed before they could extract the wounded. Even retreat became nearly impossible, as Ukrainian artillery systematically collapsed bridges and road segments behind the trapped forces. What had begun as a confident advance turned into a massacre unfolding in slow motion. Ukrainian drone feeds captured the devastation in chilling detail. Thermal cameras showed clusters of heat signatures scattering under artillery fire. High-resolution optics tracked individual soldiers sprinting between cover only to vanish in explosions. The battlefield was transformed into a maze of craters, twisted steel, and burning fuel. But the trap was not just physical, it was psychological. Russian soldiers realized they had walked straight into a carefully prepared ambush. Panic spread rapidly. Some units attempted to surrender, waving improvised white flags, only to be caught in crossfire. Others abandoned equipment and tried to escape on foot through mined terrain. Commanders lost control, discipline collapsed. Intercepted radio transmissions revealed desperation. Units called for airstrikes on their own positions to break the encirclement. Others begged for evacuation that would never come. The sense of betrayal was palpable. They had been told the road was clear. They had been promised a breakthrough. Instead, they found annihilation. Behind the scenes, Ukrainian planners had spent weeks designing this operation. They studied Russian doctrine, predicting how and where Russian commanders would push once resistance appeared to weaken. They analyzed satellite imagery of Russian staging areas, tracked logistics movements, and intercepted communications. Every detail was fed into simulations that modeled enemy behavior. The result was a trap so precise that Russian forces followed it almost exactly as predicted. The 8-kilometer corridor had been intentionally left lightly defended. Ukrainian units withdrew in stages, leaving behind destroyed equipment and scattered supply crates to create the illusion of a chaotic retreat. Fake radio chatter suggested collapsing morale. Even decoy drones were used to simulate disorganized withdrawals. Russian intelligence took the bait. What they didn't see were the thousands of hidden sensors buried in the ground. The drone launch teams concealed in barns and forests, the artillery units camouflaged under netting and foliage, and the missile systems waiting in hardened shelters. By the time Russian commanders realized the truth, it was far too late. The kill zone functioned like a giant mechanical device, each component activating at the exact moment required. First came the isolation strikes, cutting off escape routes. Then the suppression barrages, paralyzing movement. Then the precision attacks, eliminating key vehicles and command nodes. Finally, the drone swarms finished what remained. Every phase flowed seamlessly into the next. Survivors described the experience as surreal. One Russian soldier later recounted that it felt like the earth itself was hunting them. Explosions erupted from nowhere. Drones hovered like silent predators. No matter where they ran, death followed. Within hours, the Russian advance had been completely annihilated. Dozens of armored vehicles lay burning. Hundreds of troops were dead or wounded. Entire battalion groups ceased to exist. Equipment losses ran into the hundreds of millions of dollars. But the true damage was psychological. The illusion of momentum was shattered. Confidence collapsed across the front. Russian high command faced a brutal reality. Not only had they failed to break through, but they had lost a significant portion of their offensive capability in a single devastating engagement. The corridor they hoped to exploit now became a scar on the battlefield, littered with wreckage and bodies, visible even from space. And yet, the most unsettling part was how cleanly it had been done. Ukrainian forces suffered minimal casualties. Their troops remained largely hidden, protected by distance, terrain, and technology. The battle was won not through brute force, but through intelligence, preparation, and patience. This engagement marked a turning point. It demonstrated that modern warfare is no longer about who has more tanks or bigger guns. It is about who sees first, who thinks faster, and who controls the invisible battlefield of data, surveillance, and electronic warfare. For Russia, the lesson was harsh. Every future advance would now be haunted by uncertainty. Every open road could conceal another kill zone. Every silent battlefield might be hiding a trap. For Ukrainian forces, it was proof that strategy could overcome raw power. The 8 kilometers Russia gained that day came at an unimaginable cost. What seemed like victory was, in reality, the perfect setup for disaster. And the deeper they advanced, the tighter the noose became. Long after the smoke cleared, the battlefield remained a frozen snapshot of modern war's brutality. Burned-out tanks sat half-submerged in craters, twisted metal-blocked roads, scattered equipment lay abandoned where soldiers had fled. Drone footage of the destruction spread rapidly, reinforcing the psychological impact far beyond the front lines. Across military circles worldwide, analysts studied the operation in detail. They dissected every phase, every maneuver, every decision. The conclusion was unanimous: this was a masterclass in operational deception and precision warfare, and it sent a clear warning. In this war, movement does not mean progress, silence does not mean safety, and an open road may be the deadliest place of all. Because sometimes the enemy doesn't stop you from advancing, they let you walk directly into the perfect kill zone.